Yo, it's Cloverdale, and today I'm showing you how I try to make my tech house tracks more memorable, more full of life, more full of energy, so you don't forget them next month. I got 4 examples. We got my Matroda remix, we got Ice Age, we got Watch That Tongue, and Nothing Gonna Stop This, my collab with Truth and Lies. All right, let's dive into it. Let's learn.
Diamond chain looking like Ice Age. Yeah.
Say you hear a song. Say it's Miracle Maker, and it goes da 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 da, and it's got this crazy build up, and it's this iconic lead, and you can like sing it back to your friend, or maybe it's the Drugs from Amsterdam song, and you say, oh, it's like that off my face, don't know where I am, and it goes do 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 do. You can sing it back to someone. It's the part that you would use to describe it. It's the part that gets stuck in your head. It's the part that you remember. And so it's important to think about these parts of your song. And you can kind of think of them conceptually. You can think of like, do I want it to be this like empty moment with just one element, or do I want it to be this big sort of explosion? Like usually these moments are points of contrast, of points of like build-ups and then emptiness and then a wall of sound kind of thing. Or, maybe it's, maybe it is like Miracle Maker, and it's the melody and the build-up and the lead, and leads are kind of a great example of this. It's the part that you can remember and you can sing back, or maybe it is really just a super catchy vocal. Anyways, I'm going to go over some examples today. We're going to start with my remix for Matroda. This is my remix of Gimme Some Keys. I'll play how it sounds, just the build up and the first drop, and kind of just explain why I made some of the decisions that I made here, and hopefully inspire you to kind of do some fun, creative things. Or not. I don't know. Let's go.
Dance, bro, I love the way you dance. Dance, 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 dance. Dance.
All right. So that's probably just the part that we're going to look at today. So before we dive in too far, I just went in and put these locators here just to show you where drop 1 starts and then drop 1.2. And so here is where our pre-drop is. And it starts here.
Dance.
And goes for a whole bar before the drums kick in. So you may come across things like this. And so what I'm doing here is the pre-drop isn't necessarily a pre-drop that's happening before the drop starts. I'm basically having the build-up go all the way until as if this is where the drop should start. And then I'm shaving a bar out of the drop. It's almost like a fake out kind of thing. And then the rest of the drop only goes for 3 more bars. And so this is super important because you don't want to go and say you had another. And if you ever want to insert more bars, you can go Command-I, insert. So say I wanted to add another bar here, just for example's sake, because you will come across this every once in a while. I almost don't recommend it. Actually, I wanted to add another 2 bars. Wow, I was lying to you guys this whole time. That pre-drop is 2 bars. So here, because in theory, the drop almost feels like it starts here, right? So here, this would be 8 bars, but what we've done is we've gone and interjected 2, not 8, this is 16, gone and interjected 2, which I wouldn't recommend doing this, because if you're DJing a track, it's going to mess it up, right? Say you have 2 tracks playing, and then all of a sudden one track just has these extra 4 bars or these extra 2 bars, and then it drops again. Then all of a sudden these 2 tracks that were lined up aren't lined up anymore. So I always recommend never kind of doing it this way, and always just trying to stick to, having everything throughout the whole track kind of be on the grid. I'm not saying you can't break the rules. There are tons of people out there that do it. It's totally, it's almost common. But if you want your tracks to be super DJable and having everybody play them, it's not that hard to kind of stick to the grid. Okay, this one, we can kind of just break down all the elements that are in the build, and that kind of, because the build is ultimately what makes the moment also so special, right? Because the moment itself isn't too much. I honestly just took this one-shot synth that I found. Here, this is the one-shot synth, and that is raw at its original pitch. Mono poly stab F sharp. Nice, sick. Sounds like this. I don't know. There's tons and tons and tons of like analog resampled sounds out there, and that is all that is. So I just took it and manually pitched it up 10 semitones, and so I think these are all 10 semitones, and then this one's up 2 or 3 more semitones to 13, and then down to 12, and so basically I'm just building a melody by pitching these up. And you notice I don't have it warped because the sample itself is already really, really long. If I warped it, it would just try and remain like the timing intact, but I don't really care too much about the timing because it's just one thing. So I left it unwarped, so I'm going to remain with the highest quality of audio if I leave it unwarped. Yeah, so it's just that, and then I have it like a sweep up into itself. Classic. Nice. So that's just basically taking that sound, adding a ton of reverb to it, and then like at 100% wet with a bit of a long decay, freezing that reverb channel and reversing the whole thing. So freeze flattening and then reversing it, and then you'll get this sweep. Classic. And then everything else cuts out. Everything else cuts out. There's a crash, I think. Woo, exciting. Crash. And that's it. And that's what kind of makes the moment so exciting, is because everything's totally cutting out as I have built it up here. The build isn't actually too crazy. I have the drum group, which is probably just getting filtered in a little bit, so some of the highs are coming in, and it's just building, filtering in, and some of the elements aren't there. So some of the hats and stuff aren't included there. I have a kick that is sort of filtered out throughout that section. Same with the bass. It's filtered out during that section. And I also have some of... no, that's not automating there. Serum. The cutoff on the bass is opening throughout this whole section. Build-ups are always just about things rising or things falling. And I think you should have a bit of both, right? You don't want to have everything just like bigger and bigger and bigger because it's going to get too hard to follow. What you want to do is you want to have some elements kind of have their filters open up and get louder and have it pitch up and things like that. And then while that's happening, some elements need to either like just drop out, just kind of delete them and have them drop out over time, or they fade out or the volume turns down. I do so much volume automation in my tracks where I'm just automating the volume up and down to suit where it should be in the track. Throughout this whole section, I feel like the drums don't need to be as loud as they are in the build up. So I maybe have them gradually turn down in volume. I even have that on my master channel. I have a utility that is ducking out, so it's going down quite a bit, almost 5 dB in my build up. And then right here's the pre-drop. So wait, or at the start of the drop, goes up to 0.
Dance.
And then I have it ducked down a bit. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want there to be a big moment of contrast between the build up and where it drops. I want that big moment of contrast. And same here, right? I want this to be a moment of contrast as well. So I've just turned that down as well, right? And anytime throughout this, this is another build up section.
Dance.
So this almost acts like a pre-drop kind of section, even though the drums are all in there, and then boom, a little moment of contrast right there. And that's just done through volume. I do that all the time. all the time, on all kinds of different elements throughout all of it. Back to our build up. We have just some chopped up stabs from the original. I just kind of chopped up the stem and built a new rhythm. It has some echo on throughout this, and then I think it just filters, and then it has. Is it using this? No, it's not. That section. Yeah, it's just filter, endless smile, I think, and I get volume. So throwing utilities everywhere, and so this starts at 2.85. It goes up in volume, and then it gets louder. So throughout this whole section, this like piano chord is just getting louder. So that's one of the elements that I've decided, okay, I want to make this more prominent. It's sort of like a key integral part of the song, so I'm going to have it build up. The vocal, for example, is one that's actually fading away, right? Because as this builds, it's gaining more of my attention. And so if I had the vocal building at the same time, it's going to sound too busy. Those are almost two things. The chord and the vocal sit both in the mid-range. They're kind of fighting for similar space. And so they're also fighting for intention in the listener's mind. So the vocal, I have it fading away using this fade to gray knob, which you can actually find in the audio effect rack. It comes stock with Ableton under Performance and DJ. There's a fade to gray. And it's just like a delay and an EQ, and it kind of just allows you to fade it out, and it'll echo out a little bit. Take a listen. I also am automating the volume, so it's turning down in volume. There's some other delays on there too. Other than that, we mostly just have some risers that are coming from just some packs and stuff. This is a big old brass horn thing. Filling out that low end mid range, and it's got some EQing and stuff that's happening. It's filtering out over time. Basically, everything is moving. I'm trying to have everything move slightly. This here we have a okay, just a little echo thing. This one's actually not moving. In one of the builds over here, I do have it do one of these shifters. So this is a pitch shifter. And so basically as a rising moment, so this little element becomes a big riser, and that actually happens in the second drop.
Bro, you know I love the way you dance. 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 Bro, you know I love the way you dance.
So you look here, I have that volume automation on the master throughout that whole section, because this whole section, though it is a drop with the drums, it's also a big rising moment. Things are still carrying through. I actually have this riser that I have. This starts. Look at how long this riser is. And it rises throughout that whole section. And so the energy just keeps going and going and rising, and it carries through. Listen.
Bro, you know I love the way you dance. Dance. Dance.
So I just have it shut off for those couple bars, and then it comes back on. So that rising moment just keeps going and carrying through. Back to talking about this vocal for a second that's ringing out right now. Because it's an element that I already had in the track, it made for an easy rising element. I find if you can really pull from other elements that are already in your song to create your rising movements and your sort of energy transfers, it's going to like almost fit so much better with your track and sort of fit in the ethos of the vibe, because it's already a sound that's in there, and it's kind of exciting. So I will often reach for those sorts of things to create risers or create moments or create these like little special turnarounds. That is the move. Okay. I think that is like mostly it with Give Me Some Keys. Let's move on to the next example of some memorable moments. And I guess we're also talking about energy and builds and all kinds of stuff. Let's go. All right. Next up is my track Ice Age. And this one, similarly to Give Me Some Keys, it doesn't have a pre-drop before the drop. It almost has this sort of fake out after the drop. It's like the pre-drop happens when drop one starts, and it basically eats up sort of a bar of the rest of the drop. So the drop almost is like a bar shorter, but basically that's kind of included in the drop. All right, so here's how it sounds.
Diamond chain looking like Ice Age.
All right, so the memorable moment, the part that, you know, everyone's going to be like, oh, like, it's the song that goes, Diamond Chain looking like Ice Age. And it's this section right here. What I've done is I've kind of kept the bass rolling through that and then cut it out for the last bar. So the kick hits, and then the kicks are gone. And so it's just this plus the vocal. These are the main things in the vocal here.
Diamond chain looking like Ice Age.
Right? That's the bulk of it, which is just the kick, the bass line. And if you want to learn how the bass line was made, you can check out my bass lines video right here, and I can explain how the bass line in Ice Age is made. And then there's this stab, and then like a little white noise hit. That's it, right? So everything else is cut. Cut everything else. And even like you can automate things off. In this case, there's even parts of the song where I'll automate on and off my reverb send. You know, here, this is, I think, yeah, this whole section here is one of those turnaround moments. And there, I didn't want any reverb. I wanted it to be completely dry. I wanted to really emphasize the contrast of, okay, before it's really wet, and then this section is really dry, and then it pulls out. And so this whole section, there's no reverb. I have this like glitchy sound in the background. It's like an old radio effects thing. And then the vocal itself, I have tons of automation happening. It's probably filtering in and out. Oh yes, it's this rack here that I've created, which basically is, so it has an erosion, which adds white noise to a track. It has an EQ that is, you know, rounding off the top end and the bottom end, making it kind of sound like it's coming out of a telephone.
You can handle liquor shit lightweight. You can even make it out the driveway.
Some delay, and yeah, the glitches are just manually chopped in there. I find that the best way to get glitches. I've tried in a million other methods using plugins and whatnot, but chopping it manually is definitely sort of the quick, fast, dirty way, and I've found I've kind of got the best results that way. Anyways, back to the pre-drop section that we were talking about, these memorable moments. Yeah, the energy is just building all the way up. As some things are building, some things are falling out, right? So let's take a listen, see what's building.
Chain looking like.
So we have like the risers are building, but the vocals kind of fade away, right? One of these, this thing, I know it just doesn't play, but this last little bar, it's faded away. It's gone. It's not like continuing to rise. We have some other background vocals, and these I think are at the last section. They're sort of fading away as well. These orchestral drums build with it. And so they're building, they're going up, they're getting more exciting. Same with the crash cymbal, it's kind of getting more exciting. Snare build, same deal. What else we got here? It's got the drums will almost always have some sort of filter action or volume action. Yeah, look at this. This is just automating the output gain on an EQ. So this is just turning it down in volume throughout this whole build by 12 dB. So the drums, they're not even getting filtered. They're just turning down in volume as it builds. And on the master, you'll find the same thing. Sometimes I'll just use an EQ8, automate the gain. And so it's just turning down in volume until right at the drop, boom, pop right back up. That moment of contrast. I'm trying to create as many moments of contrast as I can. Other than that, not too much else in here. We got this breath that kind of reverses at times. It's kind of neat. These stabs. And they see, I cut them out at the end. They're one of the elements that kind of fades away. Here's all the risers and effects in here. Just all risers. This is one that I decided to make myself, I guess. Fun. And look at all this fun stuff I'm automating. I'm automating the decay time, the detune, the pitch bend, the filter cutoff, the other detune on the other oscillator. Like it's just all about kind of creating motion and creating change over time and creating that rising energy as some stuff rises, some stuff drops out, and then boom, cut everything. Dramatic, something, anything, moment of contrast, and then kind of chop right back into it with all the drums and kind of hitting. Oh, wow. How EDM of me. Okay.
Diamond chain looking like Ice Age.
And then I guess one last thing I should mention here is this saw synth. It's literally, I think it's just like the init saw wave with a pitch bend. Yeah, look, wow, init saw wave, 9 voices with some white noise. That's it. And then it just has a pitch bend, 2 octaves. And I just automated the pitch wheel here. That's it. Pitch bend. Boo! Ton of reverb. Wow. Very exciting. Very exciting. But what it's not is just a big, long, honking. Sometimes I feel like that's overdone. Though, I guess it kind of is in this song at one point too. Let me show you that spot where it's slightly more obnoxious. Egregious. I like that word. Egregious. It's right here.
Diamond chain looking like Ice Age.
I have it roll into this other one, which just continues to pitch bend down, but this one's like being sidechained quite a bunch. And the reason why it's a different one than this first one is now this one's processed pretty differently. It's EQ'd differently, it's compressed, it has this fade that's sort of fading out over time. There's all kinds of other processing on it. So instead of me fucking this one up, I would just duplicate it and add another one. Okay, that is the bulk of the exciting moments in Ice Age. Let's move on. Okay, next up, my track on In Rotation is Watch That Tongue. Down like this.
To the rhythm. 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 All to the rhythm, you don't stop. Hey, go. Watch that tongue. Watch that. Watch that. Watch that.
All right, so that's kind of the bulk of it. The memorable moment here, I would say, isn't as apparent as it is in the last 2 tracks, Ice Age and the Matroda remix. This one, it's a bit of a combo of this pre-drop vocal.
To the rhythm, you don't stop. Hey, go.
Which, I mean, it was pure luck of me just finding that. I think it's just a loop cloud vocal. This track actually has a lot of vocal work going on in it. And I find vocals are such an awesome way of bringing a track to life. The human ear loves the sound of the human voice. And so I'm always using them in so many different ways, whether it's like ambience in pads or little shouts or who's or has, or just like a little thing that I might delay out or chop in. So there's this like sort of like background bit that I'm kind of chopping in and out throughout. It's almost like acting like a stab. And then I have the main vocal to watch that tongue vocal.
Watch that tongue. Watch that. Watch that.
And all 3 of those elements, I would say, are kind of what is making the memorable moment. But what makes it pop so much is, again, the contrast between here and here. So as everything is like rising, some things are falling away. Let's take a listen and see if we can identify what is rising and what is falling.
To the rhythm,
So
to the rhythm,
we have the to the rhythm vocal.
to the rhythm, to the rhythm, to the rhythm, to the rhythm, to the rhythm. You don't stop, we go.
So the to the rhythm vocals like getting louder, and it's kind of basically I have two filters on it, and one is going in one direction and one is going the other, and both are kind of opening, and that started way early. So this build element had been going this whole time. It's building energy that whole time, and the longer you're building that energy, the more it's going to like pop, and you're going to have that big moment of contrast. The other vocal above, so as that one gets louder, this one I think is going to be doing that fade to gray that I talked about before. So it's fading out near the end. So it actually kind of starts faded out and then goes back in. Bunch of risers, classic. This is just sort of an effect thing. Filling out some of that stuff. Risers, sweeps, another big long riser down there. And then the bass, it's actually turning down in volume, and it's gonna, let's see what else we're automating. Probably all kinds of stuff. It's filtering in, but it starts filtered out quite a bit. Whoop. So it's filtering in, but it's also being turned down in volume. And I'd say there's some endless smile somewhere there as well. So it's almost like getting brighter, but still fading away, right? It's not becoming louder in the mix. So that's good to note. And like it doesn't always necessarily mean just like, okay, opening up the filter. It's like, okay, opening up the filter, but actually still have it fade out so that other elements can rise. Utility on the master again. And then all when it hits right at the beat, all this kind of keeps rising pretty much right up into the beat. And then everything just cuts. Everything cuts. And there's not even too much of I think there's like what is this? A little zip. And that's it.
Stop, we go. Push that tongue.
Little like kick right before. A little extra fill, and I think there's a drum fill here too. So a little fill into this.
We go. To the rhythm, you don't stop, we go. Push that tongue. Push that.
So it doesn't need too much, and a lot of kind of like what makes it exciting is the chop between that and then the vocal. And then there's these little stabs in here, and that's kind of the only lead that's in here. It's just these little stabs.
Push that tongue. Push that.
And the bass line's doing most of the work there. 2 layers. One. That's pretty much it, all of it, the bulk of it. And then this is just a little texture layer. But most of the work is all just being done with 1 layer. Yeah, okay. That's the little memorable moment, and watch that tongue. One last track left. Let's go. And the last example we're going to look at is my track with Truth and Lies, Nothing Gonna Stop This. This is actually like an earlier version of the project. I think they had the final one, but the general writing and stuff is all kind of there. This is how the last drop build kind of goes. Woohoo, super fun one. So that would definitely be like sort of the memorable moment, that Nothing Gonna Stop This building up into the bam, 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 and then Nothing Gonna Stop. So that whole fill turnaround section, similar to Ice Age and similar to my Matroda remix, is again, the pre-drop isn't in the pre-drop section. It's like at the drop. And so it builds all the way until it drops, like it doesn't drop out anywhere. And then everything cuts out. The drums cut out. I think it's just the kick. And then you can actually see the full drums are just automated off for those 3 beats. And so you have the do 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 do, and this is a resampled synth that just gone ahead and I think pitched the melody around. So this one is at 0 semitones. This one's at 1 semitone up, and so building a melody that way. That's it. Nothing crazy. Just with the kick. That's it. With the vocal comes right in to kind of introduce the next little section where it drops, and then everything hits, and that's where the crash hits and whatnot, right? So the key here is contrast, having things build and then stark moments of contrast, and then having them come right back in. Those are kind of my techniques for creating these memorable moments. Hopefully, this like gives you some insight onto what you can do to kind of create these parts of your songs that people are going to remember the most, that people are going to resonate with the most, and that people are going to tell their friends about. Try to catch people off guard a little bit, but also try to make it fit within the song, right? You don't want it to be so abrupt that you're like, wow, that's cool, but like totally out of place. It still needs to kind of somewhat work with your track. But these are the parts of songs that make, killer hit tracks, the parts that you can remember. We focus today mostly on leads and like turnaround sections and kind of these like little moments and fills. And yeah, I like to call them like turnarounds or fake outs or pre-drops or something like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this is what you have to do all the time. You could have a lead that plays like a lead melody throughout the track, that maybe that is more your memorable moment. Or maybe the memorable moment is like what we talked about with Miracle Maker. It's like the breakdown section. There's so many different ways to make your song memorable, but there's got to be something, there's too many tracks out there that just kind of like have a great groove. They're mixed really well. They're produced really well. Everything feels great about it, but I couldn't, like, as soon as I've heard it, I've forgotten it. I'm like, okay, cool song, but why should I care about this? What makes this track stand out from everything else? What makes this track feel different, makes it sound different? That's the bulk of it. Anyways, I'll stop rambling. Thank you guys for watching and learning. If you want to sign up for some one-on-one Ableton lessons with me, you can do so via the link in the description as well. There is a link to the High Octane Tech House drum kit, bunch of drum samples that I've been collecting for the past year or so. These are the ones that I use in my tracks all the time. You can use the code DEMOBUDDY to save $5 on that. Bunch of more videos here. Subscribe up there. My name's Cloverdale. Check out my music, tour dates, everything below. I'll see you guys at the rave. Okay, peace. Bye.